A lot of people don't know that the Allies actually won World War II and that the United Kingdom was part of the Allies. A lot of people also don't know that the Axis lost World War II and that Japan was part of the Axis. Today we have a very special episode because Japan sends its very best, the brand new Acura NSX, in a very special episode of Morgan Versus at the Classic Car Club. Let's talk about specs. The Acura has a 3.5-liter V6 putting out about 500 horsepower. It also has 2 electric motors and 9 forward gears. Now on paper it would seem to be better than the Morgan, which only has a 2-liter, 2-cylinder V-twin putting out about 90 horsepower. But that's where it gets tricky, because in the Acura you're always going to be compared to the prior generation NSX, which was clearly an amazing car. And this, in effect, is a $156,000 Nintendo, which is why this is junk and the Morgan wins. Now with the Acura, there's a lot to talk about and none of it good. Let's start with the color combination. One would think that the black over red combination, which is very similar to the Morgan's, would be attractive, but it hides a very serious problem. On the Morgan, when you smudge it or get it dirty, you look like a man of taste who likes to drive. Whereas with the Acura, when you smudge it or get it dirty, you look like someone who could afford neither a good car nor a good car wash. Therefore, this is junk and the Morgan wins. The Acura visibility is a problem because if you are in this vehicle and someone can see past the high door sills and recognize you in it, they will know immediately that you are someone with very poor judgment, someone who spent $150,000 on a Japanese car that will depreciate like a rock. It is almost impossible to get past the exterior design catastrophe of the Acura NSX. Now, in the history of car design, and we all know that the most beautiful car of all time is the Jaguar E-Type. Why? Because all vehicles that are truly beautiful must look like a woman who just woke up, lying on her stomach, about to get up. But the Acura is like this weird, busy mishmash of lines and the events and the things. It looks like it was designed by 12-year-olds for 12-year-olds, whereas the Morgan was designed by 50-year-olds for 10-year-olds. Therefore, this is junk and the Morgan wins. Let's talk about wheels and tires. As we know, the Morgan has a beautiful set of these 18-inch wire spoke wheels, and if they should get damaged or worn or dirt or anything accumulate, it's an indication that you're not a coward, you actually drive your car. Whereas in the Acura, if you have any damage to the wheel, as this one does, no one can see it because it's gray and it's expensive to fix, and it's an indication that you're a terrible driver. Therefore, this is junk and the Morgan wins. On the Morgan, you have these big round shells with a candle inside that you can place tape over, so in the event a rock hits the headlight is not shattered completely and rendered ineffective. On the Acura, you have this narrow strip with these LEDs built into it, which looks very cool. But if you want to protect it by placing a piece of standard width duct tape on it, the headlight is so narrow that the duct tape will render the headlight ineffective. Therefore, this is junk and the Morgan wins. Yesterday, I was in the Morgan and I approached a construction zone. There were 2 cones. So I used the Morgan's front left wheel well to push one out of the way, therefore driving through the construction zone to bypass traffic. In the Acura, the mirror sticks out so far that where I tried to use the car itself to move a construction cone, I would damage the car, costing thousands of dollars. And of course, that means the Acura is ineffective for going through construction zones. Therefore, this is junk and the Morgan wins. Time to talk about design. Now, the back of the old NSX looked like the back of a race car because it was really cool. The new NSX has real problems. You have this beak and this crease which look like a prehistoric bird that died millions of years ago. It looks like the front of a self-driving car prototype you don't want to get into. It's absolutely hideous. I don't need to compare it to the Morgan to know that this is junk and the Morgan wins. Lie after lie, disaster after disaster, the truck. What's in here? Nothing, and no storage either. But you do have a mid-engined engine, but that's the other problem because this vehicle has 2 drivetrains, both internal combustion and electric. So here you have this, which is the 3.5-liter V6, which I guess it's kind of cool, but the problem is you're in an exotic and you want to have fun in it, which means that the mid-engine placement, which more evenly balances the weight of the car, makes it less fun to drive. And of course, because it also has an electric drivetrain, that takes up the entire frunk, which is why you have 2 drivetrains, no storage, and a car I don't want. This is junk and the Morgan wins. Ingress and Egress. It's hard to do this because I don't even want to get into the car, but we'll try. This is junk, the Morgan wins. The interior. It's bad. Plastic, cheap. I mean, look at this. This is like Fisher Price. I mean, the assistance button. I mean, does it summon a better car? Does it bring you a Porsche rental? This is just absolutely horrible. For some reason, the cup holders are not in a place that's very accessible, which is back here, and is not attached, which suggests that someone put it there because they didn't know where to put it. This grippy stuff on the bottom might help, but this thing doesn't fit anywhere. Now, this is hard to understand because the Japanese are very smart people and generally make good cars. I suppose you would put it here, which the Morgan doesn't have cup holders because real drivers don't need them. This is junk, and the Morgan wins. You've got a lot of Alcantara, which is the coward's leather. You've got this infotainment screen, which is covered in smudges, and which show the size of the smudges, which suggests that someone other than your wife was in the car. But then again, in such a car, who would be married? You have some unlabeled buttons. I guess maybe they light up. I don't know. Dynamic mode, which is basically like saying, I don't know what I want. The gear shifter is this complex series of buttons. There's park, reverse, you pull, then neutral, you push, and then you have the Depeche Mode button, which I think might be drive and manual, which is also a lie because there's no manual transmission. And then the steering wheel, which they could have just cut out the middleman and put a Momo. This is all junk, and the Morgan wins. This car, so far, is basically the equivalent of the Yamato, because although it does everything on paper, it's absolute trash. But first, before we make our final decision, driving impressions. The driving modes. Let's discuss these modes before we drive anywhere. We have started the car, which puts it in sport mode, which I read starts the internal combustion engine, but nothing's happening. So let's put it in Sport Plus. Now we have internal combustion, and we have an exhaust note, and the dash is turned red. We switch it back to sport, and I don't know what's sporty about that. And then we switch to quiet mode, which sounds the same as sport. You know something? This is all shit, because the only place it should be quiet is in a hospital, or in the case of an Acura dealership, a graveyard, which is what's going to happen when they try to sell these cars. This thing sucks. This is junk. The Morgan wins. I guess the car is okay. I mean, it makes noises. It's suspended stiffly and not comfortable for New York, which are pluses. No matter how good it is, when you get into it, you feel like you are in a $20,000 Acura. Get into a Lexus. The interior, even if you don't like the design, is built perfectly. And nothing in here looks or feels like it's built that way. And then you've got the stereo has got this I guess subwoofer, which is made by ELS Studio, another brand I've never heard of. And given that I'm in the high-end audio business, you think I would know. I've never heard of these people. You people think I'm a hater. I am not. There's only one way to excuse the disaster of the design of this car, and that is through, I guess, the performance. Sport Plus. Whoa! Well, that's another story altogether. Okay, there's a lot going on here. You have a very exciting car wrapped up in the ugliest body of all time with the worst infotainment. Someone here did not build junk. This part of what it can do is, in fact, incredible. Awesome. And I can honestly say that you get two cars for the price of one. An amazing sports car and an absolute piece of junk. Morgan wins. Did you ever wonder what it's like to be, say, a super religious fundamentalist and be married for 10 years before your spouse agrees to have sex with you, and then it sucks? This is that car.